Hi, everyone. Here, I think everybody's muted. Let me unmute everyone.
That talk, Robin spoke at 240 words.
Hi, Annie.
Hello. How are you, Natalie?
I'm good. How are you, Annie?
So good. It's good to see your face. I've heard your voice a lot, but I haven't actually seen your video before. So.
Yeah. And you have long hairs. You used to have short hairs in all of your instruction videos.
Yes. Well, all the videos, I had very short hair, but since then I've grown it out. So
we have someone, Amy, Joy, right?
Yeah,
Hi, Joy.
Joy. So Joy is here, but I think, Joy, you have to unmute your own microphone. I tried to unmute you, but it wasn't working. So.
Hi, Joy.
Hi, hello.
Hi, Joy. Here.
You have such a beautiful voice, like it's so sweet.
I'm not a normal like you.
All right, now Roberto, you might have to unmute your microphone. There you go.
Thank
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Roberto.
Hi, Roberto.
Thank
Nice
you,
meeting
Natalie.
Glad to have you here. The audio okay? I'm going to use my AirPods today, but
yeah, we hear you fine.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
All right, good. We have a few more minutes before everyone. Yes, you're listening to it.
I didn't finish yet. I have to say I didn't finish yet. I'm in chapter 3.
Oh, okay. What about the rest of you? How'd you guys do on it?
I completed it. Yeah, very interesting book.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Really interesting.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're able to read it. Did you read it? Listen to it? What was?
I did both.
You did both. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And what about you, Joy?
Any help I can get.
What about you, Joy? Were you able to read it or listen to it?
Last week I tried. Now I'm not feeling well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I have my menstruation. Everything.
Everything's off. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll that's okay. We'll you'll still get quite a bit from it. Just kind of listening to the discussion and then adding any input that you have.
Yeah.
As we're talking.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is my first time. My God.
Yes. Yeah, and we used to do these every month, but I was finding it was hard for everyone to keep up with the books and reading, and so we decided to space it out a little to make sure that we had more time to read and kind of in between books. If you have any suggestions of books you think should be in the 2019 Pro Book Club, let me know, because I'll be kind of thinking through what other books we should go through. Have you guys seen the where the book club recordings are on the website? Have you ever looked at those?
No, yeah, I have not.
We did, except that I haven't had a chance to listen to it.
Yeah. So one thing that I was thinking is the videos sometimes are, it's an hour long and it's kind of a lot of material to go through, but I'm going to add all of the slides that I've done, the PowerPoint slides that I've done for each of the videos. So you can scan through those and kind of get a summary of the books that we've gone through. I think that would be helpful for our students, just so that you can get a feel for it without having to listen to the whole hour discussion.
Yeah.
That might be helpful. So I'll get those on there. And I've experimented. It was interesting because I was listening through to the book, and while I was going through, I was creating my slides and the PowerPoint slides. And then I got to the point, Roberto, you probably know, at the end where it talks about slides and too much text.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, shoot, I did it. But I think because it's more of a book club lecture, you know, like it's not necessarily a presentation that I'm doing today, the text might be helpful in review. So I kept it as is, even though it's very text heavy, we'll adapt it to what we need to today. But I got to that point, I was like, oh, dang it, I did it wrong.
Well, you're not giving a TED talk, right? So that's fine.
I'm not giving a TED talk. And that was the difference here, is there's a difference kind of in different settings. So I'm curious to hear kind of your take on what settings you're giving, either presentations or lectures or leading meetings, and some of the concepts and how they translate to, most of us probably won't give a TED talk. Maybe we will, but unless that's on your bucket list of things you want to do before in your life, most of us, it's more about just the presentations that we're giving in work, or the meetings that we're leading, or, you know, there might be certain settings. What about you, Roberto? Do you give presentations, or do you do?
All the time.
Oh, you do?
I do
Okay.
right, all the time.
So tell me,
and I was doing it all wrong.
All
I was
wrong.
doing it all wrong. All technical, you know, information. So,
okay. So good.
This was very enlightening, I would say.
Good. So I would love to hear kind of your takeaways as we go through each of the segments, to say, okay, what is it that you're going to change, or how can you, you know, what are you going to be able to do different based
everything.
on
I'm going to change everything. Yeah.
Everything.
Very,
okay, good.
Yeah, very, you know, interesting book. Man.
Yeah.
The
My only
Roberto.
focus always, on the technical.
Yeah.
The 10,000 hour rules.
The presentation. Okay, I'm a mortgage.
Okay.
I'm a lender, right? So
yeah.
I show, you know, all the numbers and all the things, but it's just, you know, it's boring.
Oh, okay.
My slides
numbers are not boring, right? I'm an accountant. I deal with numbers all the time. Numbers are not boring.
So Natalie likes the numbers. So
I like numbers too, but you know, the presentation, it's a different thing, right? Because the objective, and it's for people to come back.
Yeah.
To me, and if I'm boring there, that's it. Doesn't happen.
Right.
Hi, Noah.
Welcome, Noah.
How are you?
Glad you're here. Good to have you here.
Hi.
Good. You know, I was telling, numbers are not boring if we can articulate them in the right manner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So there were some examples. There's actually, I'm trying to remember which one that she was talking about, the scientist or the scientist or doctor that was able to provide kind of the stats and the numbers, but in an engaging way. I have it listed as one of the TED Talks. I'll pull it up here in a minute. But yeah, I think that there are probably ways, there are definitely ways to do it. It's just a matter of identifying how we want to rearrange things. And maybe we can brainstorm some ideas here today. All right, so we have, let's see, Dragos, you there? So let's see, I'm not hearing you, Dragos. And we don't have your video, but we'll go ahead and hopefully we can get the microphone going so we can hear from you. But I know Dragos does a lot of presentation work too, with his work, so. All right, anything before we kind of jump into what was everybody, Nawa, did you have a chance to read or listen to the book?
Yeah, at least just to flip through it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, good. So we'll kind of go through it, and maybe it'll motivate some of you to kind of either read through it or finish it a little bit more. So let's see. And Dragos, if you are hearing me okay, you can write in the chat box anything that we can do to help you kind of get going, or maybe it's that you're in a work setting that you can't participate. So we'll just kind of go for now. All right, so I am going to go ahead and share. Sometimes this gets tricky to share my PowerPoint and be able to view all the videos and navigate there. But this format, our book club format, I'm not giving any pointers on pronunciation or fluency or English or anything. It's really just an opportunity to discuss the topic and kind of just practice, you know, what you're working on with your pronunciation. You can practice while we're talking, but really we're going to keep the topic, the content based on the book and the information that we got here. All right, so we'll go ahead and go from here. So yeah, the book was Talk Like TED and the 9 Public Speaking Secrets of the World's Top Minds. And so TED, it was interesting to hear at the beginning of the book, they talked about kind of how TED got started, and it really hasn't been that long since TED has been in existence. I mean, a little over 10 years. But the reputation that TED has now and the reputation that it gives its speakers is pretty remarkable. And it's because the content is delivered so powerfully and the format is so powerful that that it's no wonder that it's built up such a great reputation. Does anybody remember the first kind of TED Talk they heard, or when they first learned about TED, or listened to a TED Talk? Was there any kind of a aha for you, or do you remember it all?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, Natalie, what was yours?
The first one that I came across was the one the talk delivered by Celeste Headley. I don't know if you know her. 10 Secrets of Having a Successful Conversation. That talk is very famous, and she's a radio host. And if you go to YouTube and you Google her or something, Celeste Headley.
Okay.
She's a very famous radio host show in the state.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to look that one up.
And it was funny. She you know, all those things that they used to teach us on how to make people listen to us was all crap, and we should learn her 10 secrets, and it was really funny. But she's a very good speaker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Does anybody else have one that's their very favorite that stands out to you? A TED Talk that's your very favorite that you've gone back to?
The Amy Cuddy. That's
Amy Cuddy. Yeah.
Amy Cuddy. Yeah. What is that? What's the name of it? Amy Cuddy. I listened to it many times.
The body shapes who you are.
Yes.
Right. Fake it until you make it, right?
Yeah, fake it till you make it. Exactly. Yep, fake it till you become it. So yeah, they talk about that TED Talk in this book as far as our body posture and kind of how we use our body in our presentations too. And I know I talk about it a lot in my program too, because you know we can gain a lot of confidence in the way that we hold our body and the way that we position ourselves.
Steve Jobs, the 2005 Stanford commencement speech is amazing.
Yep. Was that a big part of the Pronunciation Pro course, right? So at the second half of the Pronunciation Pro course, we break down that talk and use it as an example, because I love that one. It's so fun.
Okay, good. I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, good. Okay, so let's go ahead and just kind of break down this book a little bit and go into different pieces. So the first part is the emotion, you know, part 1 is emotional, part 2 is novel. And in the emotional side, so there's 9 chapters here. So we'll go through each one of these chapters and talk about some of the key points and what stood out to you. And Roberto, I'm really looking forward to kind of hearing kind of some of the things that stood out to you as you read through it, and as the rest of you kind of have read certain parts of it, what your takeaways are. So we have these, and then part 3 is making it memorable and some of the concepts in that. So we'll just go one by one. Let's talk about the Unleash the Master Within. So Unleash the Master Within, a big part of this is about passion. Here, let me look real quick. We've got, the voice is not clear. Okay, so we have a few more here that are, oh yeah, Yan, welcome, and Radwan, welcome. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect.
I'm going to see if that works better.
This is better.
Yeah, this is much better. Is that better? Okay. So my AirPods are maybe not as effective. Okay. So we'll go ahead with that. So welcome. And I can't scroll through the videos when I'm in the full screen with the PowerPoint. So as you have something to say, just kind of, you know, you can kind of speak up. And Sinait, welcome.
Yeah.
And if you are, if there's like noise in the background, just make sure you mute yourself or, you know, adjust. But I'll just keep you all unmuted unless there's something distracting going on. Okay?
Okay.
All right, excellent. Okay, so getting back into it. So Unleash the Master Within. So the biggest part of this first part is about passion. Is making sure that we bring that passion and bring that special interest that we have to our presentations. So we were talking a little bit before we got started here about, we might not all do a TED Talk, you know, in our life, maybe we will, but we most likely are giving presentations or speeches in different settings. And so we want to use these ideas from these powerful TED Talk presentations and use them in the presentations that we are doing or the speeches that we are doing. So I want to really get some insight on what kind of things that you can bring to the setting that you're using that can be a powerful tool for you. Okay, so that passion. And so when we're giving presentations, you know, with business or with our work, with whatever it is that we're presenting, you have to really think, well, what's my product? What business am I really in? What am I passionate about? And he uses this phrase, what makes my heart sing? Okay, so as the speakers are getting ready for these TED Talks, they really have to fine tune that message and make sure it's what they're most passionate about. Now, what's your take on this in terms of maybe you're not passionate about the as passionate about the content that you're presenting in a meeting or something like that, or maybe you are. What's your take on using passion within the work setting that you're giving presentations? Does anybody have any insight on that?
You know, sometimes there is no choice, right? It's whether you are passionate about it or not. If it's in a business or is work related, it does not matter. You have to present it, and the passion impacts definitely the articulation, how you try to present that to the level of audience you have. That has impact, but at certain point, and I feel like, you know, you don't have a choice. You just have to do it.
Yeah. Well, what happens when you show up and you are annoyed that you're there or not really happy about the presentation that you're going to give? And does that get projected to your audience?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's the point is, again, it comes out everything to how you articulate to your audience. It's if you are not there, if you don't want to really do it, you are not going to articulate it to the best of you. You are simply trying to get it done. At that point, you are trying, just giving, maybe if it's a technical presentation, you're simply trying to give all the data out there and let them figure it out. And that it's not going to be as productive as when you feel like that's something I really want to do it.
Right. Yep. Anyone else have any thoughts on this? Kind of how to bring that passion to maybe the mundane, a little bit more mundane, or things that you may be as passionate about?
Yeah, hello. Can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, hello, Annie. How are you?
Hello. Good.
Hello, Noah, and everybody.
Hi,
You guys.
Radwan.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, Senate. How are you? How are you, everybody? So I didn't read the book really, but it's a nice one. I want to read. I just started with the book, but I'm familiar with the first thing that's about getting passionate about your presentation. It's something that I used in a technique used in my IELTS exam. It's a speaking part, and they would specify a subject for you to talk about. Most of the time, the thing they ask you to talk about is not of your interests. Like they did ask me about which comic actor do you like? And I don't like comedy. I don't do any comedy. So I just watch action movies or drama or romantic movies, but not comedy. So, but I had to answer because it was like exam. If I didn't answer, they say that he's not fluent. They downgrade me, and I won't be getting good marks. So, what you have to do is to pull yourself together and try to find your passion in it. So, in a way or another, you can direct the conversation in the way you like it to go. Finding something interesting in it. And when you find your interest, you start forgetting about your fears. So it's like a balance. Where is my interest? I will just go, and otherwise I will be fearful. I will just think about the audience or the examiner and stuff like that. But when my interest is there, I stop all this extra thinking and start going with my interest flowing.
So maybe finding within the topic or within the presentation, what is it about this presentation or what is it about this topic that I can get passionate about? Steer it in more that direction. Yeah, excellent. All right, good. So kind of another talking point that they gave was give them information to better their lives. Then you'll make a deeper connection and feel more comfortable in your role. So I think a lot of this is that shift of it's not about me as a presenter, it's about my audience. Do you feel that there's kind of that, when you go into presentations, what's the mindset? Roberto, when you go into your kind of presentations, do you feel like there's more of a focus on, okay, me and what I want to tell them, or of the audience and what they need to hear or they want to hear? Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. It's always the audience. I mean, it's always them. That is the focus, okay, of the presentation, man, all the time. Never yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't solicit, at that time, anything. It's just, it's giving them, okay, what they expect. But that's the focus of my kind of presentation.
Yeah. What happens if you go in and say, I'm going to do what I want to do and I'm going to do it my way, and they just need to listen?
No, they just fall asleep and start looking at the phone. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's the way it goes. If you don't connect with the audience, at some level, then you lost them right away. Yep. You need to connect from the get-go.
Yep.
No choice in the matter.
What kind of ways? what kind of ways do you try and connect with your audience when you're giving those presentations? I know you said there's things you have to improve on, but you know, when you do kind of go into those presentations, what are some ideas of ways that you try and connect with them?
I mean, I always bring a case study, right, of the market, so that they can see, what is happening, okay? And then, that's my introduction, a case study, okay? This is the situation, okay? This is where the markets, are trending now, okay? And this is the solution, okay, that we can provide, your company, as lenders. So that's basically, my structure, right? And then it's all technical. It's going into each product, and there's when, you know, it gets tricky because it's just like, it's intense. I need to change that.
But that concept of giving them something tangible in real life examples, like you said, the case study, it brings it into like, why does this matter for me? What is this really, what is this?
Exactly, yes.
Why is it?
We always do that. We have to do that in our industry.
Yeah.
We always do that.
Yeah, does anybody else have examples of things, you know, presentations that they do and how they connect or how they make it more applicable to them?
Well, what I do is that I try to make a few jokes and kind of leading to it that, you know, the audience laugh, right? So
Okay.
when the audience laugh, they technically automatically liked you, or at least have some interest in listening to what next that you have to say.
Yeah.
So for example, I you know, sometimes I go to McGill University to give to the those doctorate students who is about to finish schools and start making big bucks, right? So I'm there to tell them about tax planning and some of the tricks for them to do their own accounting and bookkeeping, or where to find the best services, or how to save tax, or how to deduct certain expenses in their practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I did was I go, okay, guys, next year you start making big bucks. So who here wanna to buy a Ferrari or a Porsche, or who want to save $2 million to start investing? And they start laughing.
Yeah, there you go.
So so this is kind of connecting with them, at a personal level, and kind of, make some jokes about it. And
perfect. Yeah, that's later on in the book, as we talk about the sense of humor and how it does help you connect with your audience, and it brings, that they see you as more favorable, or in a more positive light. When you can...
accounting and tax are very dry, right? Like it's a dry subject. So unless you make it a bit, funny, no one's going to listen to you.
Yes, good point. Good point. Good. Okay. Another point he makes is just that, happiness is a choice. So when we're talking about passion and what we're bringing to the table, happiness is a choice, is an attitude that's contagious. So when we're happy and we're excited about something, other people are going to be happy and excited about it. And kind of, there's that contagious attitude or feeling that happens. Have you guys kind of felt that when you've heard other speakers? One example that he gives is Tony Robbins. Whenever Tony Robbins speaks, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but his energy is huge. He has this bigger than life personality. And I remember another book I was reading, it was talking about these presentations he does, and he keeps people excited for a really long time, for like days at a time. And that's kind of an extreme example. But have you guys had any experiences of that where you felt like, oh man, that was contagious. I just jumped on that, whatever they were feeling, I was feeling. Anybody gonna have some examples of that, or anything or ways that they felt that they've been able to do that or not do that well? Do you kind of feel that when you're presenting, you know, the state of the audience kind of matches what you're doing?
It's like I believe. Wait, okay, I'm muted.
Yep, I see you.
Okay, yeah, I believe that you know, whenever even anyone who's not knowledgeable about the subject can go up and make a presentation, but the presentation maybe the audience would feel bored. But you know, even if a small kid just stand to the stage and made few words, all the audience will be engaged because they feel that they feel the soul of the thing. He has something like, yeah, he can engage the audience because he's original. You know, you can say it's just like it's really real thing because he's not showing. He's trying to be himself. He's
Yeah,
only
that
himself,
authentic, genuine self. Yeah.
genuine self, exactly. And I myself, when I do presentation, I never just stick to with the information. I try to make the presentation my baby. I try to come up with the ideas. So it's the way that I give the presentation. It must be that I adapt these ideas to myself and make it in my way, and then I present it to the audience. Otherwise, I won't go just reading a mere information about common subject. It would I'll be bored, and the audience will secondarily be bored. Yeah, and it's just the you know, the infinite result of there will be no other choice. Everybody will be bored because I'm already bored of the subject.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if I can make it funny for myself, if I can make it good and funny for myself and original, this can be transformed. If I got a good presentation skills, can transform to the audience as well.
Exactly. Yes. I love it. Yeah. So some of the other points was just talking about kind of, you know, positivity and those emotions and how contagious they are. And they really do persuade our listeners. You know, positive leaders, they definitely are perceived more effective, and people want to follow them because they want to jump on that passion, that excitement for the topic. So that's a powerful skill there. Okay. Chapter 2 talks about the master the art of storytelling. So I find this to be fascinating, this whole concept of storytelling, because I am not a natural storyteller. Do any of you feel like you are a natural storyteller, that you enjoy telling stories and that's part of the way you converse with people?
Absolutely not.
No. I know, it's so hard sometimes.
I love to tell jokes.
Jokes?
All the time.
Okay, good.
But you cannot tell, those jokes in the presentation. It's just a private setting. But, you know, it helps you a little bit with the timing of the, the punchline and things like that. But it helps. If you can tell a story that is funny, it relaxes people. And then you have an end to your message. That's what I found.
Yes. And as you're telling stories or telling jokes to people, it's almost like, I know some people who I've heard maybe their jokes several times because they retell, they'll retell those jokes or their stories. And it's almost like as they retell it, they kind of fine tune it, and they've figured out like when the punchline needs to be there and how people react. And so it's almost like they're testing it out to see how people react. And I think that's actually a really good, even though I tend, there's certain people that I'm like, oh, I've heard this before. I appreciate what they're doing because they really are kind of fine tuning that craft of storytelling, and they're practicing it in a way that helps them get a better reaction or helps them. And those type of stories that have been kind of fine-tuned with maybe a smaller group, it seems like you'd be more comfortable bringing that into a presentation, or a joke into a presentation, because you're like, well, I've told this joke several times and I get a pretty consistent reaction from people, and can kind of bring it to the presentation or work it in. But in the book, he definitely talks about that, not necessarily to like tell jokes in a presentation, but to bring in funny observations about life, or observations about the topic. So there's ways to do it that can be more effective in a presentation than just in conversation with people. Okay, the art of storytelling. Joy, will you go ahead and read this for us?
Okay. Stories stimulate and engage the brain, helping the speaker connect with the audience and making it more likely they will agree with the speaker's point of view and break down distance.
Yep. How have you guys seen in presentations that you've seen, or some of these TED Talks, like what is your feeling about stories? Do you feel that pull or that connection that happens when people tell stories? Or I know that there's some speakers that I'm like, okay, enough with the story, get to the content. So sometimes it's really effective and sometimes not so much for me. What's your experience with storytelling?
For myself, it depends about the topic of the speaker. Sometimes it also reflects in ourselves. There are times like it happened to our lives. And if it is funny, then it gives me happy.
Yeah. So storytelling kind of, it hits a part of our brain that maybe is, that taps on this emotional side. So he talks about, I just want to make sure I'm seeing everybody here. He talks about this concept of Aristotle believed that persuasion occurs when three components are presented: ethos, logos, and pathos. Was this a new concept to you, or is this something that you have heard before?
No, it is new for me.
Yeah,
It was new for me too.
Yeah, it was new for me as well. So basically what he was saying is ethos is credibility. Okay, so these, you have to have that credibility and for the audience to feel like, okay, they're the experts in this topic. Okay, the logos means the persuasion through logic, data, and statistics. So Roberto, there is a place for all of those, those numbers and stats and data and things.
There is hope.
There's hope. We need that. That's a part of it. But then pathos is, appealing to the emotional side. So that's the piece that I think some of us miss in our presentations, is how are we shaping the way our audience feels? So those are some, that's a key concept there that I know that for me, I have to give more attention to, because I think a lot of it about like the logic, the data, the statistics, the content. Let's make sure that they get the information they need, but the motivation and how to keep people engaged and caring about, the content is really the hardest part for me. Is that what you guys have felt? Is that pathos part is the challenge, or do you like how have those ethos, logos, and pathos elements worked within the presentations that you have given? Any thoughts there with those? Did you have any insight as to the pathos side, kind of bringing that emotion? Is it something that like maybe makes you scared or worried when giving a presentation to try and bring that side in? Because I think that for me, it makes it more vulnerable, right? You have to be
I never thought of that before. I've never thought of that before.
Oh, okay.
I was just going there as a credible expert, and that's it, explaining it all. But I never, I never gave any weight to the emotional part of it. Now I do.
Yeah. And it's interesting because reading this book and recognizing why TED speakers are so persuasive in what they're saying, because you listen to a TED Talk and you're like, yeah, I'm on board with what they're saying. That's great. It makes me realize it's because they're appealing to that pathos side of me too, that emotional side. Not only are they bringing the ethos and logos, but they are really tapping into the pathos, which I haven't put much weight on before. So I think that that's an element that we really need to pay attention more to. So just some other ideas, bringing in personal stories about yourself, about other people, and about successful brands are really effective. Okay,
Yes.
so maybe you don't want to go personal with something in your presentation. Maybe, bringing a story about someone else, or bringing a story about a successful brand or company, or, case study, like you were saying, something that has been, bringing it into a more tangible side is really effective. I'm going to kind of go through here a little bit. Yeah, introducing in storytelling, I think it's really quite an art. Storytelling is, and we're just brushing through this art of storytelling. We can go, there's ways to go very deep in how to effectively tell stories. But some of the ideas, it says introduce a hero or someone that you can root for, and a villain, but don't make that villain a person or a competitor. You don't want to make it too direct, but just a villain as a challenge or something that that the hero is up against. Okay, the emotional, in that same topic of emotion, he talks about have a conversation. And the big thing that stood out to me in this section was how much practice it takes to have a conversation, to make it feel like a conversation. Does that, for me, that really resonated, of just like, okay, let's make this a conversation, but that doesn't come as naturally as you would think it would. If it's a conversation, you think, oh, well, I have conversations all the time, but in public speaking, making that a conversation takes a lot of practice. How much practice do you guys do when you're preparing for a presentation or a speech?
At least 10 times.
10 times?
10 dry runs, yes.
Okay. And do you do it all out loud? Are you doing it, are you moving around? How are you practicing?
It's we have in my office, we have a policy that we do at least 4 of them in a group conversation, a group discussion with the seniors and the QC to make all kind of corrections, any suggestion, adjustment. Once we have that first round with the 4 dry run completed, those 6, the remaining 6 is more of a personal. It's you try whatever the way you want to present it.
Okay.
You are, when I do it, I usually do it out loud. That way, I don't have to worry about the style I'm going to use when I'm there. And I kind of do that walking, sitting. If I know the environment that's I'm going to, then I will try to mimic that. Otherwise, I will do both walking, sitting, moving around in the stage, all kind of things.
Oh, excellent. So how do you feel with all that practice? How do you feel when you go into the presentation?
It's definitely much more simpler. You know at that point, you already know what you are going to present. And it's basically, you are not relying on what's in the PowerPoint or what's in the handout or anything. You already know the content. You already know where you're going to add your punchlines or anything, if any there, when you're going to tell your story, if you want to, that's already integrated into the conversations. It's definitely much more simpler, much more easier. It's mainly try to connect with the audience. You can probably present those facts without those practices, but when you have those, it's much more simpler to connect with the audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you touched on a ton of key talking points that he mentioned in the book, about when you're prepared, you can be more focused on the audience, it flows more conversationally, and you've practiced, you've gotten feedback from people of how to really deliver that the best way possible. Yeah, I think we underestimate the value of repetition and practice when it comes to those presentations. It probably helps your nerves calm a little bit better too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, does anybody else have any experience with how they prepare for their presentations or speeches? Any ideas of how they do that they've found to be helpful?
When I'm working, if I have a role for, like for example, I'm one of a speaker. I close the door. Before that, I prepared. I always alone inside my room, and then I practice well. Then my hands very sweat, and then I grab my two hands so that I will not be nervous.
Yeah.
Then when the event comes, I imagine that this is for the audience, not for myself, and then I will be the one to be embarrassed if I will not perform well. That's in my mind. And then I need to eye contact with the audience. That's my experience.
So there's a lot of nerves that happen. There's a lot of that we have to manage, in these situations, making sure that we're able to deliver the content, and that our mind is really concentrated on what we're saying and how we're delivering it, so that we can really connect in that way. Because if we're like, oh no, the slides, or we're, our thoughts are somewhere else, it's going to create a disconnect in the presentation.
Yes.
So yeah, that practicing relentlessly, and internalize your content, like Na was saying, so that you can deliver the presentation as comfortably as having a conversation with a close friend, and then getting feedback and rehearsing.
I noticed that after in my middle of my speak, nervous was gone, and then my hands doesn't sweat anymore. And then after that event, I have some words or important topic that I forgot. Then I miss it. I regret. Oh, next time I will do this more than that. That's in my mind.
Yeah. So there are always going to be things you're like, oh, I didn't do that as well as I could have, and you can kind of learn from those experiences. But instead of beating ourselves up about those, it can be more thinking negatively about that experience, changing our thoughts to be like, oh, well, I'm proud of myself for doing it, and here are the good things that happened, and I'll improve in this way next time.
Yes.
Okay. So in this section, he talks a lot about, your voice, your gestures, your body language really have to match the message, so that it so that you exhibit trust. You know, if your voice doesn't match, if the body language doesn't match, there's that distrust or that disconnect that happens. Let's talk a little bit about the pitch, volume, pitch, and pauses. Okay, let's see. So volume, pitch, and pauses. And we talk a lot about this in the Pronunciation Pro course is, you know, using that volume, using that pitch, using the pauses. TED speakers have a great way of matching that so that, or using those elements to really engage their speakers. And we talk about if you go too fast, it's going to be hard for your listener and, you know, your audience to really follow very well. Because it takes a lot of mental energy. He talks about that in the book, how much mental energy it actually takes to listen to people and to absorb the content that you're giving. So we have to be mindful of that and make sure that we're delivering it in a way that's as easy as possible for them to digest. Okay, so the way we use our pitch affects things, and pausing and emphasizing, all of that really matters. Having kind of a command presence, our body posture, making sure that we have a strong posture and that we present ourselves well and carry ourselves well in those presentations. Hand gestures, he went a lot into hand gestures, and he said that complex thinkers use complex gestures. So if you've seen kind of people who use their hand gestures a lot, it's like they can't help themselves, right? It's just like they really have to use that. Do you ever feel like while you're presenting, you're not sure what to do with your hands? Is that ever an issue for you guys? Roberto's saying no. You know what to do, huh? Okay. Well, good. What
I don't know what to do. I mean, they just moved. I mean,
yeah.
we moved the hands. We just like gesture all the time. I don't know if it's the right movement or not. But
well, I think it's good because it probably matches what you're trying to say. It probably matches the content.
I hope so. Yes.
It's an extension of you and your body. Yes. How you're giving that content. That's good.
Yes.
And they just say, you definitely use gestures, like those are important. You just don't want to be flailing. You don't want it to be too exaggerated all the time. But it's an important way to kind of emphasize those key ideas and key messages. Hand movements.
And it was interesting. I mean, that powered area that they mentioned.
Yeah.
Like here and not here. So that was interesting.
So explain what the power area is. Power, what did they call it? Power
area, I think. I mean, it's the region, okay, where your hands, I mean, should be not here, not here, or not here, but here in this power center.
Yeah.
Of yours. That's how I got it from the
so that power center, it's between kind of where our eye level is and where our navel is. So where our belly button is just kind of in that.
And to the sides, it's like.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not too much extended beyond our shoulders or, our kind of our zone on that side.
Like a baseball game, a gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. Where we need to send the pitch. Exactly. So if we can keep our hands mostly within that, but then he talks about, eager nonverbal style and where that's more animated and broad and open. And that needs to be saved for those really big moments in our presentation. So if we do that the whole time, it's just going to be very distracting. But if we keep it within the zone and we're kind of talking like this, and then, and then we can use the bigger hand movements for more emphasis, then that's really effective. All right, good. Okay, how about fidgeting or tapping or jiggling things? I know that I definitely have a tendency to kind of play with my ring or, you know, or play with a pen if it's in my hand. So I think that is part of that nervous energy that sometimes happens. But he just says a good way to help with this is to videotape yourself. Nawa, do you ever videotape yourself when you're doing those practice runs? Here, you might have to unmute yourself. I muted you a minute ago when you're on the phone. Here, let me see if there we go.
Yeah, we do, and we kind of try to roll that back and see. Specifically, we want to look at that body movement.
Mm-hmm.
If it's right, or if we are just overly just jumping from one place to next, it's being more of a distraction rather than emphasizing the points.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't look at anything more on the recording itself. That's the only thing we want to make sure is the gesture is right and we are not jumping from point A to point B without a reason.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, videotaping, you know, we talk a lot about recording our voice when we're practicing with pronunciation and fluency. But when it comes to presenting and making sure that our body movements and our, you know, our body gestures are right and appropriate for the presentation, it does help quite a bit to make sure that we are videotaping ourselves and watching that and seeing, okay, what am I doing with my hands and my gestures and the way that I'm moving? Am I standing, you know, still? Am I fidgeting? You know, what am I doing that can be improved on? And a lot of times that doesn't take very many other people to give you feedback. Usually you're able to pick it up on yourself and say, oh, shoot, I did that. I need to stop doing that. So this comes back to the power posing. He talks about power posing and how having that posture or going into presentation and kind of doing this before or doing those power poses before a presentation can get our body in the right position to release some important chemicals to help us perform better. So if we have the increased testosterone and lower cortisol levels in the brain, it helps us feel more confident and commanding on stage. So that is a kind of a quick life hack or presentation hack that we can all use, is doing some of those power poses. So that comes from Amy Cuddy's TED Talk, you know, that we were talking about earlier, how your body shapes your mind. And like she says, fake it till you make it, or fake it until you become it. Is kind of bring that posture into it until you feel confident. All right, let's see. We've talked a lot about this. Delivery and gestures, he says, is mastered through practice, and it will definitely enhance your overall message. But without the passion and the practice, you know, you won't be nearly as effective, okay? So we definitely still have to have that passion, that practice, the gestures, it's all of it combined. Okay, teach me something new. This is the second part. We talk about like bringing something novel or new. So we want to hook them with something new or novel. And this really, I'm going to kind of skim through this because I do think that it's very applicable to TED Talks, where you just have to wow and, you know, bring this big bang to it. Sometimes what we're presenting doesn't have this like ultimate wow factor, but we can definitely give that some time and some thought to say, okay, how can I really hook my listener? How can I relate this in a way that is a new way of thinking about it? I think sometimes we have some of these like more ordinary topics or things that maybe aren't brand new, but let's look at it in a different way. How can we see this in a different way to help them kind of hook them a little bit, hook our audience? Because we're all wired to want new information. And so that dopamine that, you know, in the brain is released when we have that new information. And he talks about making sure that we are concise in our message. If we can really narrow down our key talking points to 140 characters, then we really have it narrowed down appropriately. But if it's too complex, it's too broad, it's too, you know, it's too ambiguous, it's going to be very difficult for our listener to get the right message. So those like Twitter headlines. And, you know, cognitive research shows that our brains definitely need to see the bigger picture before the details. Okay, so as we're going through our topics and presentations, let's really get a clear focus on what the big picture idea is. What's the thing that as your audience leaves, what do you want them to remember from what you have to say? And how can we really make sure that our presentation packages that in a way that it's easy for them to walk away and say, oh yeah, that presentation on mortgages or that presentation on, you know, investing, like here's my takeaway and here's something that I really remember from that. Instead of, oh, I remember a lot of numbers, I remember a lot of stats, but I'm not sure what the overall message was. Okay. Okay, deliver jaw-dropping moments. He mentioned the TED Talk from Bill Gates, and I haven't watched it, but Roberto, do you remember this part in the book where he talks about Bill Gates and releasing the mosquitoes?
That's fantastic. Yeah,
yes, I do.
Yeah, you need to watch that TED Talk.
He released mosquitoes into the audience?
Yes.
Okay, that's jaw-dropping.
But they are not infected ones, so
right.
No one gets sick out of that.
Yeah, I'm like, did they pass out some bug spray too? Kind of keep them from. So
how did they get rid of the mosquitoes after that? How did they get rid of them?
I don't know how that affected everything. But
did somebody slap one and just kill them like that?
I don't know. It seems like it's very distracting to the audience to know that there's like it. I don't know if it was it done at the beginning or the end of the presentation, Nawa?
It was somewhere in the middle of the presentation.
Okay. So Bill Gates, for you who haven't heard about this, Bill Gates, and you'll have to look up the TED Talk from Bill Gates, but he's basically talking about Nawa, tell me a little summary about.
It's about the malaria, you know, how the research, the Gates Foundation working on the malaria eradication and the vaccination they are trying to work on more. That's for the more poor settings, right? For the underdeveloping countries. That's the theme that he was bringing there, spreading those mosquitoes. He was saying, okay, hey, it's not just for the developing countries. You rich people or the people in a developed country, you need to experience that to really understand the problems out there. Mm-hmm. That was his main message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as part of it, he released, what was it, like 5,000 mosquitoes? Or
I don't remember the number, but it was quite a bit, yes.
Yeah, and he released these mosquitoes into the audience to make it, you know, kind of that jaw-dropping, you know, wait, what? And so there was absolutely, I'm assuming, an emotional response to his message as he did that. And really, when you deliver a jaw-dropping moment, or you kind of have this wow factor with your presentations, it's just more memorable.
Are you calling Tammy right now?
More memorable to the experience.
Yeah, because David.
Here, let's go ahead here. And that's what we're trying to do. How can we make our presentations a little bit more memorable? How can we make sure that there's a little bit of emotional, like that pathos that we were talking about, bring that emotional side to it. So there is that release of dopamine, which helps memory and information processing. Okay, so as we present, we want to bring in that emotion. That's what helps people remember. And it helps, you know, it says how vividly we perceive something in the first place predicts how vividly we'll remember it later on. Okay, and I think that's a strong argument towards the bringing that pathos, that emotional side to our presentation, is it helps us remember. You know, when we bring that emotion into it, when we bring the storytelling into our presentations, it brings an emotional element, and that's what we remember. That's what our brains hold on to. That's what we're wired to remember. So it says the brain is wired to recall emotionally vivid events, whether positive or negative. You know, we remember those. Okay. So, you know, talking about statistics, that part, you know, he definitely, and that's probably a part, Roberto, for you to review a little bit, is how he uses the statistics, but puts them in a meaningful context. So it's like, how do these statistics apply to our audience directly? So we definitely still have to use statistics. We definitely have to use the numbers. We have to, you know, we have to get the content to our audience, but how can we frame it in a way that really hits home to them and makes it more relatable? And please stop me if you have kind of some ideas here, or some thoughts on these topics. So let's see. Okay, then chapter 6, lighten up. So we talked a little bit about kind of using humor in our presentations. Natalie gave us a great example of how she kind of uses humor in a topic like accounting, where it can be a little bit, you know, more dry, but tend to be more dry. But if you bring a little bit of humor, it brings the defenses down, and your audience is more likely to be more receptive to your message, and willing to support you in what you're saying. If they see, okay, they don't take themselves so seriously. We can kind of have fun with this. I think that brings a really nice element to presentations. And he says in the book, he says, unless you're a professional comedian, jokes are not authentic. But a humorous observation is appropriate or very effective. And obviously he's talking to TED Talks. So in your presentations or in your meetings or situations you're in, it might be a little bit different. But you can kind of gauge what that would be for you. But yeah, humorous observations. If you found something to be funny, other people might find it to be funny too. If you saw something or observed something that was funny to you, you know, that might be something to use. I find myself with my kids, there are humorous situations all the time with my kids. And I write those things down because, man, they just get me giggling. I think it's so funny. Some of the things they say and the way they interpret things. So those are the types of stories that I tend to tell. Those humorous stories that I tend to tell are things that my kids say or things that they did that were funny. So, you know, people with good sense of humor are more likely, we're more likely to attribute them with other good, desirable traits. And so it does help us overall to be seen in a favorable light by our audience.
So, as Nathalie said, whenever we start up with a joke or stuff, we will ice break with the audience, and we will start to have real contact with the audience. And it's also an unexpected start or unexpected kickoff. So everybody is expecting a kind of boring presentation, and you start up with a joke. So it breaks the ice. It make it a jaw-dropping moment as well. So that will engage the audience as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, it's jaw dropping. It's memorable. It's emotional. You know, it kind of brings this emotional release to it, which, you know, it brings a lot of good things to the presentation. So you're right. A lot of times when a presenter gets up, you're expecting it to be boring. And so when they actually say something funny or bring in a funny observation or tell a joke, it's shocking. It's surprising.
Exactly. It shows confidence from the presenter side,
Yes.
because if he can tell a joke and get away with it, then start to kick off his presentation with a joke, it shows he's confident as well. So
Yeah.
it helps him. Yeah, it relaxes him as well. So it it engages the audience, relaxes the speaker, and then he can go on smoothly.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you
But
can
for
tell a
the
joke that,
jaw-dropping moments, I believe we need to, the presenter need to be well prepared. So he need to just make it's well planned moments. So the presenter beforehand, in his mind, he will just go through these situations many times before delivering a jaw-dropping moment. It's well calculated and well presented. I guess it needs a good speaker to deliver this kind of moments and a lot of practice.
yeah. Yeah, he gives a lot of examples about Steve Jobs and some of the presentations that he gives in like releasing new Apple products and the way that he releases the new Apple products. Like he is an excellent example of jaw dropping. You know, he makes these memorable experiences in his presentations.
The easiest way, I guess, the easiest way to deliver a jaw-dropping moment is talking about your personal. It's just to open up, talking about your personal experience. Just like you talked about your kids and how you relate with them, your
Yeah,
problems with the kids or family issues, you know.
yeah.
Then this will be jaw-dropping moments, because we're not expecting Annie to talk about her family, right? We're expecting Annie just to talk about the book and trying to be a teacher, you know. So when you go out of the context, then it's fun. It's nice. It's engaging. So
Yeah,
it's delivering the unexpected.
yeah, yeah. You know, it's good because sometimes I categorize. It's like, well, this is home life, this is work life, and you know, you keep them separate. But I'm recognizing more and more that we're all people. We're all
Connected.
individuals. We all have families. We all have, you know, we all have our work. We all have our families. We all have all of these other interests that we're involved in. And when we can be more personal about that and bring that personal element into it, it connects us better and helps us, you know, helps us connect and have a better interaction and better experience in even a work setting. So I'm learning to do that a little bit more, but I know I can do it even more, and it'd be more fun for all of us, I think. And to hear more from, you know, from all of you and your experiences. I love hearing more of your personal experiences and what it's like for you. So yeah, I think that you bring a great point there. All right. Let's see. Okay, so it's just giving some examples. I was talking earlier about how, you know, these PowerPoints, I'll have them connected to the video, the recording of the video. So I have a bunch of points here just to refresh or give a summary of what the book is talking about, but we don't necessarily need to go through every point. So here it's just talking about statistics alone are boring, and shock alone is a turnoff. If it was just, you know, shock and awe without any of the content or the, you know, and any of the meat of it, or humor alone, if you just get up and tell jokes the whole time, that's empty. But being able to bring them all in, and personal stories, statistics, you know, bringing all of the you know, quality content, some of those more memorable experiences. It's the mix of them all that makes the difference. All right. Okay, how are we doing with time here? Oh, we're a little bit over here. What's everyone's take? Should we go through this? I realize if some people need to leave, that's fine, but I can stay for another 10 minutes or so and we can kind of go through some of this. What's the
10 minutes
Yeah,
is okay.
let's go through it maybe a little quicker. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go through a little bit quicker. So
yeah.
Chapter 7 talks about sticking to the 18-minute rule, and it's basically just saying, you know, if you have a presentation longer than 18 minutes, build in some soft breaks. So like bringing in stories or videos or demonstrations that kind of break up the content every 10 minutes. Okay, so that I think is a very tangible thing for us to walk away with. It says we really do need to kind of break it up a little bit. And let's see, kind of bringing in more focus with it. So we sometimes think, oh, I have all this content to give, but really nobody's going to remember all of the content that you provide under presentation. And so how can we package it in a way that it's a little bit more, that's more memorable? And what I like that, that the author goes through is he talks about the rule of 3, okay, that we see 3 things. 3 is memorable. We remember 3 things very well. So if we have 3 talking points, our listeners are going to really retain that much, much easier. So you'll notice that he has 3 sections of his, 3 sections to this book and 3 chapters within each section. So he's even using the rule of 3s in this situation. And one thing he talks about with the rule of 3s, here, I'm gonna come back here. Let's see, the rule of 3s. You know, he says, okay, you break it down into, you know, your main headline, so that 140 character main concept idea, and then let's break that into 3 concepts, and then let's have 3 different either personal stories or some kind of, you know, shocking, something memorable, something emotional with each of those 3 concepts. And so I thought that was a really good takeaway of just like, okay, when we have that key concept, then let's identify 3 talking points. And not go beyond that if possible, because it really is lost in our listener. Okay, let's see. Okay, paint a mental picture with multi-sensory experiences was the next part. So he's talking about, you know, we really want to touch on more than just one sense. So if they're just listening, it's just sound, and they're just listening to you, it's not as effective as if we have sight, if we have sound, we have touch, taste, smell. If we bring some other element into the presentation, and that can be, we're talking, but then we have a visual, and then we have, you know, we have some kind of prop or demonstration. I mean, it brings in all of these elements that just help the brain kind of remember things better and shift things around. Vision trumps all other senses. So delivering information in pictures rather than text. And this is where I got to, I'm like, oh shoot, I didn't have any pictures in this presentation. But text alone isn't as interesting as if we have some kind of picture. Pictures are more memorable. All right. And to try and keep it as simple as possible, because our brains can't think of too many things at a time. So probably the concept, and this is an example probably what not to do, is we have text right here, right? And so you might be trying to read it, but then you can't listen to what we're saying at the same time as reading it. So it can kind of be maybe, you know, confusing or hard to follow as much as if I just had a simple thought and then talked, or had a text that we read together and then we talked about it. Does that make sense? So making sure that we're not making our audience multitask. Don't just think about what you want people to know, think about what you want them to feel. So we've really talked about that quite a bit, is like that emotional side of things becomes very important in helping people remember. So let's not just think about what we want them to know, how do you want them to feel as they come away from those presentations? Are they going to be excited about investing, Natalie? Are they going to be excited about what they can do? You know, so it's that feeling of excitement that's going to motivate them to do something about it, right? Again, props and demonstrations are good. Help them grasp the idea. And then courage gets noticed. So I think that when telling personal stories, it takes a level of vulnerability, and that's courage. You know, when you talk about something personal, and you bring that to the stage or bring that to your presentation, it really captures their hearts. And something that I'm going to kind of keep practicing with and keep kind of playing with myself. Okay, stay in your lane is chapter 9. And it's basically just talking about, let's be ourselves. Let's not pretend to be something else. Let's not be phony. To really gain people's trust, we need to be our authentic self. And like we were talking about, it takes a lot of practice in our presentation work to really truly bring ourselves to the stage and bring ourselves to that presentation. But that's really, you know, being your true, real self is going to be you know, more convincing or more persuasive to your audience than trying to be something else. In the book, he talks about Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin
Airlines.
Yeah, Virgin Airlines. He says that in his interviews with him and in his just regular conversations, he's exactly the same. You know, like there's no difference in how Richard Branson operates. Whether he's on camera or he's just hanging out with friends, he's the same person. And so you kind of have to think to yourself, are you the same person on stage as you are talking to, you know, your colleagues or friends? And you can bring that level of passion to both. Okay, let's see. Yep, and he just says, you know, identify your lane, why you're so passionate about that topic, and then be true and authentic to that concept. So one quote he had in this book that I really liked, and I felt like kind of sums things up really well. He says, well, what habits did you cultivate in your 20s and 30s? This is to Warren Buffett, who is very successful. He's made a lot of money, investor and things. What habits did you cultivate in your 20s and 30s that have led to your success in life? So as I was listening to this, I hurried and, you know, wrote it down. He says, you've got to learn to communicate in life, and it's enormously important. Schools underestimate that. If you can't communicate with people and get your ideas across, you're giving up your potential. Okay? And that's what, when I bring, you know, my passion in teaching pronunciation and fluency is exactly this. It's because I believe so strongly that we reach our highest potential when we can communicate clearly. And when I can help students gain that confidence in being able to communicate clearly and effectively in their profession, in their work, in their presentations, then that's what gets me so excited. That's when I see, okay, they're going to be able to reach their fullest potential in their profession, in their life, in their, you know, whatever they're trying to accomplish here, if you can communicate clearly. And if you can feel like you can bring your true authentic self to that presentation. And I know that when speaking in a second language, sometimes there's a disconnect there. You're like, well, if I were speaking in my native tongue, I could definitely get up there with more confidence and I could speak without any trouble and bring my true self. But sometimes that's a little bit harder, or a lot harder in a second language. So that's why we're working on what we are here at Pronunciation Pro, is to help bring that confidence to English. You know, when you speak English, and if you're giving presentations in English, how can we help you be more clear, be more effective, be more persuasive, and communicate that with confidence and truly be your true authentic self. That's when you're going to really be able to reach that potential. All right. Does anybody have any kind of you know, in summary, what this book, you know, as you read it or read parts of it, or even just in this discussion, what's kind of some of the takeaways that you're feeling from this? Nawa, what for you is something that you feel like?
To me, it's mainly be yourself and practice before you deliver. You know, it's there is no substitute for that. And also, the main point is try to engage, try to articulate the ideas that resonates to the audience. It's a different audience has a different level of capacity to observe your information, and articulating that in the sense that's right for that level of audience is the best way to go for that.
Yep. Awesome. What about you, Natalie?
Oh, I only got to chapter 3, remember? But, you know, going through this with you, I think practice and the sense of, and sharing the stories. I mean, depending on the audience, depending on the topic, you know, but you have to make the effort to either find someone else is saying something or someone else's story that can connect with your topic and connect with the audience. And then you have to practice a lot, really. Steve Jobs rules 10,000 hours to perfect something.
Yeah, to become an expert in something. Yeah. 10,000 hours of practice.
Yeah, yeah. So, so that's just that. So, but you know, in our very busy business life, it's very hard to find the time to practice. You know, you don't even have enough time to do your technical work, leave alone finding all that hour to practice for a presentation. So that's the fine line. That's something you have to give, and you know, the fine line that you give and take. So
yeah, and I think it comes back to, there's a book we read about the one thing, and the concept in the one thing is if there's one thing that I can work on that will improve many other areas of life, then I need to give more attention and time to that one thing. So if that one thing, if you feel like improving your presentations will improve, you know, several areas, or improving your communication is going to help you in your business and your social, and your, you know, if there are a lot of areas that affects and that will positively influence, then we need to give more focus to that, you know. And so it just is it's a matter of identifying, is that a one thing that I need to give more time to, or is it, you know, not as important as maybe some other areas to put our attention. So yeah, you're absolutely right. That
like the one thing that we are working on right now, we all are working on right now, is our pronunciations to perfect our accent. And I'm also seeing a voice coach, a voice accent, no, not an accent coach, a voice coach, so that I can work on, you know, bringing my voice down as a chest voice more than like, you know, the
head voice.
Head voice. So that's what I am working on at this moment.
Excellent.
On top of all a zillion deadlines that I have to deal with.
Yeah. So yeah, identifying for ourselves what it is that is the most important thing to work on is key. Okay, so just kind of wrapping it up. I know for me, I'm going to bring in more storytelling. I'm going to be more aware of storytelling and bringing that element in, and the practice element. You know, really getting that practice. You're just like you were saying. It doesn't just happen. You know, successful public speakers and presenters practice a lot. Okay. Any other concluding thoughts from anyone before we wrap up here? So I will post this presentation, but I did kind of gather a lot of the TED Talks that he mentioned in the book. So I have a couple pages of those. And if you are interested in kind of getting a list of these, we'll eventually be putting a whole bunch of these on the site. But if you want me to email you this list, just email me and say, can I get the TED Talk list? at Annie@pronunciationpro.com, and I'll just copy this and send it to you so that you can kind of review some of these top TED Talks that he mentions in his book. Okay? Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming today and staying a little bit longer here. But I hope you were able to gain a few things, just some few key things that you can apply and use those and see how, and let us know how it goes.
All right. Thank you so much, Annie. Thank you,
All right. Thanks,
everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Take care. Have a good day.
Yeah.